everyone, and welcome to today's Centurion Research Solutions webinar on how to develop winning proposals. I'm your host, Rich Thielen, General Manager here at Centurion. I appreciate everyone joining us for what will be an information-packed session. A little bit of background on Centurion. We track 20,000 plus federal government opportunities across multiple vertical markets. We provide leading-edge business intelligence that informs your business development efforts. Our Opportunity Assessment Now tool enables you to perform detailed predictive analysis of your pipeline that results in an increased win probability. We offer custom research and analysis, pipeline development, along with custom business development training. These services have been created with one thing in mind, helping you and your clients win more business. This is the fourth in our Government Contractor Knowledge webinar series to be conducted by Mike Lisagor, Centurion's Government Business Development Subject Matter Expert. Mike founded CelerityWorks in 1999 and has been helping executives accelerate their revenue growth for decades. He has personally managed and reviewed hundreds of government proposals. We are recording today's event. An on-demand copy, as well as a copy of the slides, will be available later after today's webinar. Finally, in consideration of your busy schedules, we will be continuing this discussion at our company LinkedIn profile right after the conclusion of today's webinar. So without further ado, Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Rich, and the hundreds of you who have joined us today. I'm broadcasting from the East Coast at Centurion's headquarters in Chantilly, Virginia for the first time. And this morning I'm going to concentrate on the proposal aspect, the third of 6 key business growth tactics shown here. I'll cover many of the questions from the registration forms and will also be happy to respond via email or at our LinkedIn group after today's presentation. Many of you have probably experienced a proposal meltdown or submitted a proposal only to discover that it didn't make the competitive range or had some serious deficiencies. I'll be emphasizing proposal best practices, sharing common mistakes I've seen, and discuss the role of the proposal manager. All 3 of these areas are consistent with the major institutionalized type proposal process and should help you to increase your win rate and avoid the dreaded loser's debrief. Centurion has identified 7 major elements of a successful capture initiative. I've discussed these in previous webinars. However, the key point is that each of these capture factors are meaningless unless they are reflected in your proposal for government evaluators to consider. Most proposal losses can be traced back to a weakness in one or more of these areas, either a capture strategy or implementation weakness or a proposal deficiency. At some point, usually a few months after the anticipated release date, the government agency will release a formal request for proposal or quote. This proposal phase is the subject of today's webinar. I should add that it isn't my intention, nor is it possible in just 30 minutes to cover all the elements of a standard proposal process. Instead, I'll share several key aspects of a winning proposal. A more thorough treatment of this subject tailored to your specific company is also available. For many of you, managing a proposal is just another duty to be added on top of your operational responsibilities. And as I can attest, the first time can be particularly overwhelming. So let's start with a few words about the role of a proposal manager. Hopefully, after today's webinar, you won't feel like tearing all your hair out. Perhaps one of the biggest challenges for most proposal managers is to identify, recruit, and motivate company experts to work on the proposal. Your success or failure depends on at least 4 major factors. Your ability to develop trusting relationships with line management. Line managers' willingness to accommodate proposal writing needs. In other words, they need to have a stake in the game. Subject matter experts' understanding of the importance of the company's business growth and to their own experts' career growth. Finally, the overall culture of the organization. Does senior management understand the importance of the proposal process, and are they willing to make a commitment to incentivize staff who support winning proposals? Frankly, all these attitudes either do or don't flow down from the company's chief executive. The The proposal manager is also responsible for ensuring that the proposal is in compliance with the request for proposal or quote. They prepare and enforce a master proposal schedule, assign key proposal staff, and negotiate for knowledgeable and experienced writers. Prepare a bid and proposal budget and monitor proposal expenses. Make writing assignments and give instructions to the proposal team. Coordinate proposal writing, resume, and project summary assignments with teaming partners. Sometimes, if you're unusually fortunate, all of the client's needs will be reflected in the RFP, but this often isn't the case. As opposed to most commercial acquisitions, government procurements can have many stakeholders and influencers, and some of the proposal evaluators might also have their own agendas or biases. Companies that consistently win new business do a thorough job of understanding the client's needs, hot buttons, issues, and preferences prior to the release of a request for proposal. The absence of this understanding usually results in a mediocre or generic proposal, and more often than not, a check mark in the loss column. The RFP review activity probably seems fairly obvious, yet I have run across proposal managers who have not read the RFP cover to cover. For that matter, I've coached quite a few project managers who haven't read their contracts, but that's a topic for later this year. It's important to study each section and clause in the RFP to determine if there are any special requirements that your company or team can't satisfy. Also, to understand the proposal instructions, often contained in Section L, and the evaluation criteria in Section M. The final RFP can present several issues or risks, especially as the government looks for ways to tighten their fiscal belt in anticipation of a 2013 forced balance budget. These include any real or perceived organizational conflicts of interest that might prevent your company from bidding. Sometimes these conflicts can be mitigated through communication with the client prior to the RFP release or afterwards during requests for clarifications. Otherwise, you can try to make your case in your proposal, but that's a risky approach. I once submitted a bid to develop a software system knowing that my company had supported the system design. However, I believed that the value of our solution to this client would probably overshadow any concern over a possible conflict. Fortunately, the two other bidders didn't protest our award. A change in the prime contractor small business classification to something like service-disabled, veteran-owned small business or minority-owned business, etc., whether initiated internally within an agency or forced by your competitors, can result in the client selecting a different acquisition strategy that could impact your capture and teaming strategy. This is very frustrating when it happens, but it kind of goes with the territory. Requirements or deliverable changes that can impact profit potential are, of course, a major concern and need to be carefully examined. Project schedule and technical performance risk as a result of RFP changes are also important to analyze and might even force a no-bid decision. Of course, a change in the contract type to firm fixed price, cost plus award fee, performance-based, or cost recovery might have a significant impact on your technical approach and pricing strategy. This can then ripple through all parts of the proposal. I've demolished some really good pizza at late-night deliberations trying to figure out how to respond to these type of changes. The last-minute inclusion of a requirement that the contractor must post a performance bond can cause you to have to run around to make the necessary arrangements, or, in the case of a very small business, could pose a serious credit challenge. Liquidated damages can be an RFP and resulting contract clause that is financially unacceptable to some companies, or at the least necessitate a financial risk assessment. Depending on the contract type, there are numerous possible changes in all areas of a final RFP that could increase your financial risk. Clearly, this is particularly important on fixed price bids. I've seen too many inexperienced managers continue to submit a firm price proposal that resulted in serious cost overruns. In one case, it dismantled the company. This is just one reason there needs to be a senior price review and approval prior to proposal submittal. It also argues for early development of the cost strategy and formulation of a should cost and pricing model. Waiting until the last week before doing pricing is one of the major weaknesses of many government contractors. Many procurements for services such as A&E utilize Form SF330 as the proposal template. Here are some of the best practices derived from U.S. Air Force submissions. Keep submissions concise. Thicker is not better. No cover letter. Use bold print and shading to highlight key points. Projects for key personnel, Section E, don't have to line up with team projects, Section F. Make sure key personnel have appropriate registrations or certifications. Acknowledge and address any unsatisfactory past performance evaluations in Section H. And finally, don't tweak the profile codes in Part 2 for each submission. They don't get much weight in selections. Among other common weaknesses of proposal efforts is the lack of an institutionalized bid decision process. Each of these factors should be carefully and unemotionally weighed. I'll be covering these in considerable detail during the March 13th webinar. To bid or not to bid, how to use bid decision process to increase win probability. And I'll also discuss possible indicators that the government already has an idea of the preferred company. Centurion's Opportunity Assessment Now product supports this type of decision making. But if nothing else, a simple Word or Excel table will enable you to carefully quantify whether to bid an opportunity, and if so, what weaknesses have to be corrected. Hallway bid discussions are a recipe for poor communication, an absence of proposal staff buy-in, and the resulting proposal process disaster. If key managers don't have the opportunity to express their views, regardless of the outcome, they won't have confidence in the bid, and they will merely play to finish, not to win. The exact design of a proposal schedule will depend on several factors, such as the complexity of the proposal requirements, whether you have prior experience with the type of bid, and the proposal due date. During the last webinar, I shared a more detailed proposal schedule. Here is a simpler task order schedule with key activities and reviews that you can download later today. The effort to lay out a concise schedule with due dates is time well spent. Proposals are mini projects, and so the same fundamental project principles apply. I've reviewed a surprisingly large number of proposals that failed to adequately address all of the requirements in an RFP. Too many proposal teams get caught up with putting together their approach to the job and lose sight that the first gate they have to get through is submitting a compliant proposal. As far as the government's concerned, a non-compliant proposal is just one less bidder in the competitive range for them to have to deal with. You don't want to lose a competition because you forgot to cover an RFP requirement. You also will want to avoid the subsequent uncomfortable debrief with your company's executives. If you're going to lose, try to make it for some reason outside of your control. The key to avoiding this kind of fiasco is a compliance matrix. At a minimum, it should identify every RFP requirement by number, a few-word description, and eventually the section in the proposal where that requirement will be discussed. Some clients request this matrix as part of your proposal to help them perform their compliance check. Either way, I almost always include it unless the proposal's two-page number constrained. Whether to present it at the beginning or broken into sections is a proposal manager's judgment call. I've seen many instances where the statement of work is inconsistent with the proposal instructions and evaluation criteria. How to respond to these situations is also a judgment call, but I would caution against spending too many hours deliberating your approach to this problem. Rather, make sure to provide the evaluator a clear traceability path for purposes of proposal evaluation. It's amazing to me how many contractors begin writing complex proposals without first having a well-planned kickoff meeting. Introductions of the proposal team members and their roles is really important. An overview of the capture and proposal strategies should be provided. A summary of the RFP structure. Evaluation factors for award and their respective weighting. Make sure that the approximate number of pages correlates to these weightings. The proposal development schedule. I'd be remiss if I didn't say a few words about the frequency of government RFP release slippage. Capture and proposal managers have to balance the utility of developing some of the proposal material in anticipation of an RFP. There is the very big risk that the contract will be canceled or that the RFP will change in some substantial way. However, there are some parts of the proposal that can be prepared early, such as storyboards, themes and discriminators, technical approach, major graphics, project management plan, resumes, and project summaries. An incumbent contractor has a greater probability of this material being useful in the actual proposal. However, don't get too caught up making these items perfect until you see the final RFP. I once did a job with a large four-letter acronym integrator. In spite of numerous cautions from their teammates, they spent over $1 million getting ready for the RFP, which then ended up slipping a few months at a time for almost a year. Upon RFP release, their president made the decision not to spend any more money chasing the bid. As an incumbent small business, we lost 40 staff positions. Major themes and discriminators will be covered in more detail in a few slides. Proposal storyboards, or a detailed proposal outline. More on this also in a few moments. Technical management, past performance, and resume storyboards, and writing assignments and page allocations. Also include a proposal style guide and writing guidelines such as our company or our team, font and font sizes, and whether it'll be Mr. or Ms. or full name. Open action item assignment and items requiring management approval. Points of contact, including teammates if appropriate. And finally, any procedures necessary to ensure proposal security. Writing a proposal without first preparing at a minimum a detailed outline or proposal storyboards as shown here usually results in costly rewrites and painful proposal reviews. The topic of how to develop proposal storyboards is beyond the scope of today's presentation. However, one point about the importance of proposal graphics. Some government proposal evaluators prefer to read text, while perhaps an equal number are impacted more positively through the use of graphics, tables, figures, and diagrams. Winning proposals often consist of a balance between the two. It's important to know which your target customer might prefer. For instance, a research agency proposal might lend itself to a more complicated, thesis-like proposal, as opposed to a bid to a client service-focused agency that might not involve subject matter expertise. Proposals should tell a story at the level of the average potential reviewer in a way that clearly explains your company's solution. And simple flow diagrams and tables are not what the government means when they state the contractor is not to overuse graphics in the proposal. Themes and discriminators make inferior approaches obvious, so they will drive you to more superior approaches. They also force you to relate features to benefits. So any major proposal, conduct a theming and discriminator session to answer the question, why should the government select us? And substantiate your themes and your claims. Here are 10 characteristics of strong proposal themes. The first several are substantiated sales message, point of emphasis, advantage, unique or superior benefit, and supported claim. Woven throughout the proposal, themes should be in the cover letter and cover graphic to unify and focus the entire presentation. They should be direct and address program issues or customer concerns and supportable with concrete evidence. They incorporate your strengths and should also incorporate or ghost your competition's weaknesses. Finally, themes need to be responsive to Section C, the Statement of Work, the proposal requirements, and Section M evaluation criteria. Ideally, proposal themes should be incorporated during the outline or storyboarding process. Key themes should be tied to writing assignments and then incorporated in the earliest drafts. Of course, this is not always the case, and themes sometimes start to evolve once the first draft is put together. Here are some examples of good and bad proposal themes. The bad ones are too general or merely chest beating. The effective themes, or the good themes, are specific, quantifiable, and defendable, and hopefully will resonate with your client. The best themes focus on how you can help the client. Pictured here for your future use are several high-level and technical themes that might stimulate your thinking in a theming session. You can download this later. Here are some possible topics for management themes. And finally, some of the more common key personnel themes. A discriminator is a theme that no other competitor can claim. It's non-trivial in the customer's eyes. Its approach should be unique to us, believable, and easily defendable, and not possible for the competitors. If you can't or don't discriminate yourself in the proposal, then why submit it? Now a few words about proposal writing. Employ a proposal style guide that lays out in a way that doesn't require a week to plow through the basic rules you expect the writers to follow. And where appropriate, include a discussion of risk and mitigation in your proposal. It demonstrates your understanding of the project. Assign writing page limits. Otherwise, engineers and other experts will write forever. It's just the nature of the beast. You want to force them to be concise and understandable. Samuel Johnson, among others, said, "I did not have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one instead." I can't emphasize enough the role good graphics play in writing a winning proposal. You can figure that about half the evaluators will be most comfortable gathering information in written form. The other half will, like me, have a more visual orientation. I prefer flow diagrams, tables, and pictures that supplement the text. Also, graphics play a critical role in breaking up the text into less overwhelming sections. This flow diagram, when accompanied by explanatory text, could be very effective. On the other hand, there is such a thing as going graphically overboard. Merely looking at this graphic might drive an evaluator to throw out your proposal. When reformatting resumes for a proposal, use buzzwords from the RFP, from the Statement of Work in Section M. Consider placing a text box at the top that summarizes how this individual fits the Statement of Work requirements. Refer in the same resume to equipment, software, or other RFP requirements. Be literal. Don't assume an evaluator knows what a certain project or task involves. And follow RFP experience section requirements. Agencies are increasingly relying on past performance to select contractors as a way to lower their acquisition costs. Select projects that are relevant to the current proposal. Try not to submit references in your proposal only to discover at a loser's debrief that the customer was not pleased with your performance on that project. If it was negative, and you want to include the past performance anyway, you should indicate the corrective action taken to fix the problem. If you're using as references in conjunction with performance, you should reach out to the contact to make sure it is okay. Make sure they are references that will give positive feedback and that there are no issues. Making sure they exemplify the experience the company has and why they are being referenced in the first place. Verify that the former client is willing to provide a positive performance review and that you haven't recently overburdened them with similar requests. Obtain current contact information for the contracting officer and other points of contact to include in your project summary write-up. Also, verify the accuracy of the information being presented. For instance, don't indicate Oracle DB experience when it was SAP. Reviews are stressful, but remember, it's not us against them. The reviewers and the writers should all be invested in winning the contract. Sometimes they need to be reminded of this. Because reviewers can either really help or really derail a proposal, I'd like to spend a little time sharing some hard-earned lessons learned. Reviewers must read and analyze the RFP before the review. I know this sounds obvious, but it's often not the case. Conduct thorough proposal reviews with the same reviewers in all reviews. Adding a reviewer at a second review is just looking for a disaster or redirection. On a more complex proposal, it is useful to assign different reviewers to concentrate on one or more of the following: the technical section, management section, resumes, past performance, compliance, checking that the proposal meets the requirements, cost proposal, and someone to read front to back for consistency and integration of proposal themes and discriminators. Review as if you are a government evaluator. Review for RFP compliance for your assigned section. The proposal team should provide a requirements traceability matrix to the review team. Look for inconsistencies between different sections of the proposal. Someone in your company also needs to confirm that the cost proposal is consistent with the technical and management approach. It can be very useful during a first review for the reviewers to help refine and substantiate themes and discriminators. However, it is not useful for the review team to completely redirect the proposal approach unless senior management believes it completely missed the mark. When reviewing, be specific. Provide a solution or example for every problem you point out. For instance, meet one-on-one with the writer of a technical section to explain how a flow diagram can be improved. Does the YS story come through? If not, provide further substantiation and examples in your review comments. Many procurements now require an oral presentation, especially task order procurements. This will be the subject of a future webinar, but I'd like to share a few important guidelines. As illustrated here, a presenter's voice and the visuals are critical to make a positive impression on the evaluators. It's important that the project key personnel present a majority of the material. Of course, sometimes the project expert is an uncommunicative recluse. In these cases, care needs to be given as to their role. Hopefully, they will respond to some presentation skills coaching. Definitely rehearse. And for major bids, consider the use of a presentation coach. Remember to state, support, and summarize. Slide quality matters. Your presentation is an example of the kind of support the client can expect from your firm. Dress appropriately, and make sure you understand a question before you answer it. To summarize, proposals should be RFP compliant and easy to evaluate. They should be responsive to customer needs and concerns and consistent among sections and volumes. They should be credible, based on substantiated claims, and tell a readable story, supported by consistent graphics and delivered on time. There are, of course, many other critical components of a successful growth strategy. Here's a list of topics for paid custom online and in-person workshops. I've helped improve the BD and proposal process at over 60 government contractors, so please feel free to contact us to discuss your business development training or coaching needs. I hope you can join me on March 13th when I'll explain how to use a bid decision process to dramatically improve your win probability. Feel free to email one of the individuals shown on this slide for further information. A copy of today's slide will be available at the web address listed here, and a recording to this session will be uploaded by tomorrow. We'll be sending you an email with the link to today's slides, a recording of the webinar, and a link to register for the next webinar. Based on today's attendance, I'd recommend registering early to guarantee your virtual seat. I'll leave this slide up for the next 5 minutes, and I'll get to the LinkedIn website in about 10 minutes. Until March 13th, I thank you for your attention and happy hunting.
Mike, thank you so much. That was a very information-packed session. Really appreciate it. Great job. And thank you for all the attendees. Hopefully you all will benefit from all the wealth of information that Mike provided us as well. Once again, as Mike mentioned, the slide will stay up where you can download the slides at www.centurionresearch.com/webinars. Feel free to join us at the LinkedIn site. It's posted there as well on the slide. Mike, thanks again, and thank you everybody out there for joining us on the call.